So how do we go about writing a program in Java? The example program we did looked like this one. Greeting is the name of your class. So you're always going to start your class with class, public, and some name. You'll see a starting bracket and a closing bracket. Then we have public static void main open bracket string arguments, and that always appears as well. There'll be an explanation of that eventually. Start your main function, close your main function, and put the code inside those brackets. So these brackets or braces mark the beginning and end of a block of code. So the start of the class is matched with the end of the class. The start of the main function matched with the end of the main function. Unlike Python, Java doesn't care about indentation. So if you write some code and you're thinking, oh, I really don't like my indentation, you can highlight the code, press Control-I, and the compiler will make it look nice and neat for you. That's useful. Eventually, you're going to have all sorts of brackets. When we get into if statements and for loops, we're going to have brackets and brackets and brackets. And so I strongly recommend commenting your brackets. So I'd love to see a little note here saying this is the end of the class. And that way, when you get more and more brackets, you'll know what they stand for. So when you're asking me for help and I see a whole pile of brackets, I'm going to ask you to comment them before I give you any help. So get in the habit, comment your brackets. A semicolon is used to mark the end of a line of code. So let's see, this is really our only line of code, and it's marked with a semicolon. The public class, if you put a semicolon here, you'd be saying that is the end of the class. That's why you don't see one there. Same thing, there is no semicolon here, otherwise the main line would end right there. So it just ends every other line of code. Other ones it won't end will be beginnings of for loops and if statements. So if it's the beginning of a big block of code, no semicolon, but individual codes definitely end with a semicolon. Get used to putting your comments in. 2 slashes are the beginning of a comment. So that's what this is right here. This is saying we're putting a comment in. And if you have a big pile of code and you just want to run your program without running that, you can do /* at the beginning of a whole pile of code and */ at the end of it. And it'll just comment this entire section. Super useful if you're testing your program and something's not running. To get output, system.out print open bracket double quotation instead of single in Python, any message plus any variable. So you can have plus variable 1, plus variable 2, plus variable 3. You can put a collection of messages in here. So for example, systemout.print, your first number is, so there's our message. Systemout.print num2, there's our variable. You could have done the whole thing with one line saying system.out.print, put your message in, and then add the variable. So systemout.print. And there's print and print line. Print line takes me to the next line, so I think I'll do a print line instead. So we could say your first number is first number equals, and then we just add the variable in, num2. If you wanted to get fancy, you could put some more words in, such as, and your second number is. So a very versatile line of code. You're allowed to put in as many messages as you want, as many variables as you want, and you just combine them with a plus sign. So your first number is, and your second number, those are number signs, by the way. Second number is, so end that message, and your second number might be, I don't know, num3. When you're done, end the line of code. So message, end the message, add a variable, add another message. Whoops, that was my Python days coming in. add your last variable. You can also format your output so it looks nice. The formatting is this %. This says I'm about to format something. So we're going to imagine we have a variable that's a quotient. It's num1 divided by num2, so it's going to give us lots of decimals. And we want to only have 2 numbers after the decimal. So perhaps you only want to see 2 of them. So you can format it. You say print f rather than print or print line. This tells the compiler that you're formatting it. Your message appears as normal. You just have to say % and then what kind of formatting you're expecting. This tells us what kind of variable. So an F stands for a floating point number, and there are all sorts of different abbreviations depending on what variable we're using. So a floating point number is a decimal. So, and this \n is how you get to the next line. Then commas, just like we had in Python, however many variables you decided to format. So this will say the number is 1.43, so 2 decimals, or if we want 3, 1.429, or if we want 4 decimals or 5 decimals. We can go beyond that. We can actually make ourselves a chart. Whew, let's see what this one looks like. So what's it doing? It's saying take 10 spaces. So this is 10 spaces. And we're going to write the word team. S stands for string. So last time we had F, which was a floating point number. This time we have a string. Then we're going to take 5 spaces, and that's where the wins appears. And then 6 spaces for draw, and 8 spaces for losses. Now things can line up on the left or on the right. If there's a negative, things line up on the left. What happens next? The next line uses the exact same numbers, puts USA and 120. So there's USA taking up 10 spaces, which makes it line up nicely. 1 taking up 5 spaces, 2 taking up 6 spaces, and the last one taking up 8 spaces. And what made it line up on the right? Notice there's no negative sign on this one. And what's the D? The D stands for integer. Not sure why, but any numbers without decimals, you'd put %, how big a space, and then D. So just go over a couple more so you understand what's happening. So formatting is useful when you want to line things up. We'll do one more line. -10 means 10 spaces, lining up on the left. We're looking for a string, and it's going to match up with the first one listed. So the first one listed is our string England, and that takes up 10 spaces. We continue formatting. We're expecting 5 spaces lining up on the left, and it should be a number without decimals. That's where the 1 is. 5 spaces lining up on the left. Your next one, 6 spaces lining up on the left, and it's a number. That's the 2. And the last one, 8 spaces lining up on the right because there's no negative, and that's where the 0 comes in. So you have 2 types of output, print and printf. And remember, you can use print ln or print line if you want to get back to the next line. Okay, so what are you doing today? You're working on assignment 2A. 2A is just getting you used to print lines. Tell me a few things about yourself. 2B, you're going to make a chart. I would probably copy paste this and make some changes. 2C, you're going to work with decimals. That's the one that's going to look a lot like this. We're just getting used to showing things after the decimal. All right, should be a good day today. Have fun.